Hello and welcome back for another GiantSlayerTV Top 10 video. Today's video will be a countdown of the top champions for rank play in patch 12.3. Mid-set is just around the corner, but plenty of us are still grinding out ranks in the latest patch, 12.3. While the patch itself did barely anything for the meta, the previous B patch in 12.2 is what really shaped the current top compositions and champions. We'll be breaking down the top 10 for those champions, ranking them based on overall value in the meta and consistency in various roles such as damage dealer, frontline, and utility. With all that said, go ahead and get started. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come. Be sure to also follow our GiantSlayerTV social media pages. Alright, let's get back to the video. Starting off our top 10, we have Ezreal coming in as the number 10 champion. As usual, this spot on the list goes to an impactful 1 cost in the meta. Just like before, the 3 most common 1 cost units early game that provide the most value are Ezreal, Caitlyn, and Twisted Fate. While the other 2 champions are still good, Ezreal has taken this week's spot primarily because of how much innovators have influenced the meta. Innovators are everywhere. Early game, mid game, late game, every game. Part of that is due to how strong the end game board is, but also just because innovators provide a stable board throughout the game. Plus, is one of the few ways to consistently play AP or AD, making it a flexible option. Ezreal holds down early levels of the game as an item holder for AD items. On top of that, Ezreal also has the scrap tag, so you can have a cohesive board built around scrap, innovator, and likely clockwork. If you 2-star enough units early, it's for sure going to win streak, especially since you can toss an extra component onto Ezreal to gain a full item with scrap. Later into the game, Ezreal will fall off, but that's alright. The job of a 1-cost champion is primarily to be used as an item holder early in the game, and Ezreal does a great job at that. So if you're looking to play a stable early game, or even win streak, we recommend building a board around Ezreal. We'll be upfront and make it clear there's multiple innovators on today's list. One such champion coming in at number 9 is Blitzcrank. It's easy to overlook Blitzcrank's impact on a game because he's just a form of CC players are always looking out for. Scout, see a Blitzcrank, reposition. When you really think about it, isn't the fact that one champion can do that a bit crazy? As in crazy good? We agree Blitzcrank is good, and by golly, we won't stand by for another week without putting him in our top 10. Okay, dramatic, but let's be honest, Blitzcrank for sure deserves to be in the top 10. A lot of compositions utilize him throughout the early stages of the game, and quite a few even run him late game. Need to cheese out a win for the round? Blitzcrank it is. And there's counterplay to Blitzcrank since all you have to do is scout and move your unit slightly. Of course, there is counterplay to that counterplay, so the mind games run deep when Blitzcrank is involved. In any case, besides the CC, Blitzcrank also has 3 tags. Unfortunately, he is losing Protector in the upcoming mid-set, but Scrap and Bodyguard still make him a relevant champion for most metas. If you aren't already using Blitzcrank, we certainly recommend doing so. Our first non-innovator champion coming in at number 8 is Urgot. The frequency in which Urgot is used in the meta may be at odds with our placement with him in the top 10, but hear us out first. We definitely agree that Urgot is a consistent damage dealer and is a key piece of the Chemtech composition that many players use in the meta. The reason we're only putting Urgot at number 8 is because Chemtech Bruiser functions due to all the champions involved, not just Urgot. And let's be real, how often do you see Urgot used outside the one composition he's played in? Basically never. That doesn't mean Urgot is a bad carry, it's just that he needs a specific composition to be useful in. That composition being Chemtech Bruiser. There he shines as the primary damage dealer, though you generally need extra damage to back him up, such as Jinx, Victor, or a different carry. The best part about Urgot is the flexibility he provides as an AD carry. Not so much the composition you play him in, but more so that you can pivot between Urgot, Yonei, and other AD carries easily because of the items. Rolling on 7 and didn't find a Yonei but hit an Urgot? There you go, play around with Chemtech Bruiser. Flexibility and consistency is what makes Urgot a good boy. Let's move on to the number 7 champion, Shaco. Assassins aren't quite as scary as they were a few metas ago, but nonetheless, Shaco is still doing well. Unlike Akali, the other Syndicate assassin carry Shaco can be found in 2-starred as early as Stage 3. In Stage 4, Syndicate board with Shaco 2 and good items can easily stabilize and accelerate the pace of the lobby. From there, Shaco 3 is capable of outright winning games, though it comes down to sweaty positioning for both the Shaco player and the other players in the lobby. Those who sweat the most can win, so if you're not willing to do that, maybe Shaco and Assassins isn't the composition for you. It'll be interesting to see how the Assassin meta plays out in the mid-set considering both Shaco and Akali are being removed. Shaco currently serves an important mid-game role as a 3-cost carry that stabilizes boards, while Akali provides a means to cap an endgame Syndicate or Assassin board. With both of those gone, the strength of Syndicate will shift drastically. But for now, if you're still on the Assassin hype train and want to spam them before the mid-set, then Shaco with Syndicate Assassin is the comp for you. One of the only 5 costs in our top 10 is up next, coming in at number 6, Jace. Yep, we're back to innovators, and no other innovator hits quite as hard as Jace does, at least in the late game and when he's level 2. The downside to Jace, and really any 5-cost carry, is the inconsistency at which players can 2-star them reliably. This has always been the case for 5-cost, but even more so after the shop changes that lowered the chance of finding a 5-cost at level 8. Now that it's slightly harder to 2-star him, Jace is mainly used as supplementary damage and as a trait bot for 7 innovators. Despite that, he's still an important cog in the wheel of innovators, so definitely don't skip over him just because 2-starring a 5-cost is difficult. Besides, who needs a 5-cost carry when the innovator dragon can 1v9? Look, we warned you there were a lot of innovators today, as the next champion coming in at number 5 is Heimerdinger. It finally happened. Heimerdinger, Yordle, is in our top 10. We just can't ignore how much of a presence Heimer has had in the recent meta, particularly in tournaments. It's clear that highly skilled players value this Yordle heavily in their games, considering how often we saw Heimer used as a mid-game carry as well as part of an end-game comp with innovators. One of the best features about Heimer is that he can carry AP items. In this meta, that's a bit rare, especially since the late game is lacking for AP compositions. Being able to put those items on the Heimerdinger makes it a bit easier to flex into other champions like Lux, Victor, Orianna, and Seraphine. Or heck, you can just keep playing Heimerdinger. Word of caution though, that a full 6 Yordle composition is hard to do well with. As such, we recommend sticking to Heimer with either 3 Yordle board or just Innovator Scholar, as otherwise you may be disappointed with how your game plays out. Now we're into our top 4, starting with Fiora as the number 4 champion. Challengers are doing well, but honestly the success rate of Fiora in the meta doesn't have much to do with the trait. Sure, it's useful on Fiora, and she is a key part of the Yonei Challenger composition, but the real reason Fiora is a strong champion is her flexibility. Because Fiora's ability does a ton of damage on its own even without items, as well as it keeps Fiora alive, it makes her the perfect secondary damage dealer for a lot of comps. Hit Fiora 2, toss her in, maybe a few items, and bam! Your board is suddenly significantly better. She fits into practically any composition, but of course challengers are where she shines the brightest. Using Fiora also lets you splash an Enforcer for extra utility in the late game. The only downside for Fiora is that as a main carry, she won't do nearly as well compared to champions like Yonei, Jace, or Urgot. But when paired with those champions to add extra damage, yeah, Fiora is perfect for that. Speaking of him, the next champion coming in on our list at number 3 is Yonei. Challengers continue to prove time and time again that they are the most consistent composition regardless of the meta. From day 1 of set 6, challengers have been doing well. The center of that composition is, of course, Yonei. With 2 stat boost traits accessing the backline and innate survivability, Yonei is the perfect melee carry. Toss generic AD items and away he goes, slashing and thrashing the enemy team in a matter of seconds. Few other melee carries have been as successful as Yonei for so long, as generally they're overbuffed and become overpowered. Not Yonei though, as no amount of nerfs have preventing him from doing well in the meta. We'll be sad to see Yonei leave in the mid-set and wonder whether challengers will remain as consistent without him. Now that we're into our top 2, we want to point out that we're lumping quite a few champions into these 2 spots. The reason is that they fit into a specific category. For the number 2 spot on our list, that category is Frontliners, with it being jointly given to Braum and Sion. Both of these champions are used frequently in the meta by the majority of compositions. Especially flexible boards, as both Braum and Sion have really good forms of CC. Sion is a bit more reliable since targeting is goated, but Braum only costs 1 spot on the board and is only slightly less reliable than Sion. Basically, if you need a frontline, then look no further than Braum or Sion. Sure, there are other frontline champions to consider, like Bruisers or Leona, but none of them are going to bring the same consistent CC and tankiness that Braum and Sion have. Unfortunately, Sion is going bye-bye in the mid-set, but perhaps a certain beefy frontliner will be a decent replacement for him. And the number 1 spot on our list is, again, going to the 3 most flexible units in the game, Janna, Orianna, and Yuumi, also known as Joy. As we stated in the past, these 3 champions are by far the best if your goal is to play flexibly. Yuumi is definitely the reigning queen of that title because any composition can utilize her effectively thanks to her shield and CC. Janna gets used probably the second most because she has 3 tags, one of which is Scholar, meaning she pairs easily with Yuumi. Finally, Orianna is often part of compositions just on her own for CC or splashed in to get Clockwork and Enchanter for only a few spaces on the board. Bottom line is all 3 of these champions, together or not, are valuable in the meta. Maybe the flex meta will go away for a bit once the mid-set comes out, but for now, in 12.3, to do well, all you need is a bit of joy. That's all for our top 10 champions for patch 12.3. But before we go, we've got a few honorable mentions to quickly discuss. Our first honorable mention is Victor. We want to highlight Victor because he goes quite well in a few compositions in the meta. Truly unique part about Victor that most other 5-cost carries fail at is he does well even as a 1-star champion. Giving leftover AP items in 1 cash should be enough to change the outcome of a fight into your favor. Being a 5-cost does mean relying on Victor consistently is quite difficult, but as extra damage, especially AP damage, he's quite useful. The second and last honorable mention is Kog'Maw. Because Kog'Maw is leaving in the mid-set, we wanted to give him a brief highlight due to the consistency at which the Kog'Maw Protector reroll composition has had throughout Set 6. Not the best composition, but it's one of the few reroll builds that a player can turn to often. Kog'Maw has % health damage, meaning he's one of the few champions capable of beating up beefy frontliners, and that role is likely to be missed in the mid-set. Alright folks, that's all we have for you for today. Throughout Set 6 so far, we've seen a lot of the same champions in our top 10 because they're just by far the most consistent. Quite a few of those units will be leaving with the mid-set, so we're interested to see what new champions take their places in future metas. Let us know in the comment section below which champion you'll miss the most that's being removed from the mid-set. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Future Giant Slayer TFT videos.